From beyond the veil of the Force, infinite paths stretched before us. Choices made and unmade. Destinies fulfilled and averted. Today, we explore one such path. What if Padmé Amidala was never pregnant? Without heirs to protect, without visions of childbirth and death, would Anakin Skywalker's fall have been different? Or would the Sith Lord Sidious simply adapt his plans to ensure that Vader was born regardless? The Senate Guard Corvette exploded in a cascade of flame above Coruscant's industrial sector. Padmé Amidala gripped the armrest of her diplomatic transport as shrapnel screamed past the viewport, her pilot banking hard to avoid the debris field. This was the third assassination attempt in as many weeks. Separatist remnants, her security detail claimed. But Padmé knew better. Someone wanted her silenced. As the transport steadied and began its descent toward the Senate Medical Center, she pressed a hand to her abdomen. Not from injury, from absence. The medical consultation she'd scheduled weeks ago had finally arrived, and with it, a truth she could no longer avoid. The clinic's walls were sterile white, designed for discretion. High-ranking senators and diplomats received care here, away from prying eyes and hollow news reporters. The medical droid's optical sensors dimmed as it delivered its findings with clinical precision. Senator Amidala, our analysis indicates permanent reproductive impairment, likely caused by prolonged exposure to separatist bioweapons during your captivity on Geonosis and subsequent field operations. The cellular damage is irreversible. Padmé had expected this. She'd felt it somehow in the quiet moments between war councils and Senate debates. But hearing it confirmed carved something hollow in her chest. Not grief exactly, something more complicated. Does anyone else know? She asked quietly. Medical records are encrypted, Senator. However, routine health screenings for all active senators are reviewed by the Supreme Chancellor's Office for security purposes. Her blood went cold. Palpatine. When Anakin arrived at their apartment that evening, he found her standing at the viewport, watching the sunset over Coruscant's endless cityscape. He could sense her turmoil through her bond before she even turned around. Padmé, what's wrong? She told him. Not everything. Not about Palpatine's access to her medical files, but enough. Anakin's face cycled through emotions faster than hyperspace calculations. Shock, confusion, and then, unexpectedly, relief. You're okay with this? She asked, searching his face. Anakin crossed to her, taking her hands in his. I thought I wanted... He paused, choosing words carefully. The Jedi always talked about my destiny, the chosen one, a legacy to fulfill. But Padmé, all I've ever really wanted was you. Not prophecies, not heirs to carry some burden I don't even understand. His grip tightened. We can have a future without all of that weight. Just us. Padmé wanted to share his relief, but something in her gut twisted with unease. In a galaxy consumed by war, where everyone was defined by their purpose, what did it mean to have no future beyond themselves? What she didn't know was that across the city, in the Chancellor's office, Palpatine was reviewing her medical file with interest that bordered on satisfaction. How unfortunate, he murmured to the empty room, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Young Skywalker's bloodline ends before it can begin. But his smile suggested this was anything but unfortunate. The nightmares began 3 weeks later. Anakin had experienced prophetic dreams before. The death of his mother, glimpses of the Clone Wars before they erupted. But he never dreamed of Padmé's death until now. These visions arrived suddenly, violently, in the weeks after learning she could never bear children. The Force was showing him something new, something terrible. He saw her strangled by invisible hands in the Senate chamber, poisoned at state dinners, thrown from landing platforms by anonymous attackers. In every vision, she died in violence, political violence, assassination, not fate. Another dream? Obi-Wan asked during their morning briefing aboard the Resolute. The Outer Rim sieges were grinding toward their conclusion, but Anakin's attention kept drifting. It's nothing, Anakin said too quickly. Just war stress. Obi-Wan studied his former Padawan with concern. Something had changed in Anakin recently. Not the desperate attachment he'd sensed before. Something harder. Angrier. "The Council is worried about you, Anakin. Master Yoda senses great turmoil in your future." "The Council is always worried," Anakin shot back. "Maybe they should worry less about my feelings and more about the politicians tearing the Republic apart while we're out here bleeding for it." The venom in his voice made Obi-Wan flinch. This wasn't the impulsive, conflicted young man he knew. This was something colder, more resolved. On Coruscant, Yoda stood in the council chamber, troubled. Through the Force, he could feel Anakin Skywalker's path diverging. But diverging toward what? The young knight was no longer drowning in fear and attachment. He was burning with purpose. And that, Yoda realized with creeping dread, might be far more dangerous.
"No longer clinging to the future, young Skywalker is,"
Yoda murmured to Mace Windu.
"Rejecting it, he becomes unpredictable. This makes him."
"Perhaps that's what we needed," Mace replied, though his tone held little conviction. "A chosen one, unbound by prophecy." Yoda's ears drooped.
"Or unbound by restraint."
In the Chancellor's office, Palpatine was adjusting his plans with the meticulous care of a surgeon. Before him, holographic data streams displayed political alignments, military positions, and psychological profiles. At the center of it all, Anakin Skywalker.
"Without heirs, he has nothing to lose,"
Palpatine said to Padmé Amidala, his trusted aide.
"Fear for the future was always plan A, but fear of the present,"
he smiled,
"that requires a different approach."
"The Senator?" Amidala asked carefully.
"Must become a traitor in all but name,"
Palpatine confirmed.
"Young Skywalker will not turn to save Padmé from death, but he will turn to save her from the Jedi, if we make the Jedi appear to threaten everything she represents."
Padmé pulled up Padmé's recent Senate speeches. Her rhetoric had grown sharper, more openly critical of emergency powers and military oversight. Good. He'd been subtly encouraging this through intermediaries, knowing that passion would make her careless.
"Order 66 proceeds as planned,"
Palpatine continued.
"But this time, Vader's fall will not be born of desperation. It will be born of conviction, and a Vader who believes in the Empire."
His eyes gleamed yellow for just a moment.
"That is a Vader who will never doubt."
The Sith Lord formerly known as Darth Sidious leaned back in his chair, calculating. Padmé Amidala would die, of course, but not before, not during, after, when Vader was too broken to save her, too transformed to remember why he should try. The key was making Anakin choose the Empire before he became Vader, and that required making the Jedi into exactly what Anakin feared most. The real threat to everything he loved. "The Senate is becoming a cage," Padmé said to Bail Organa and Mon Mothma in her apartment, her voice low despite the security jammers. "Every week, Palpatine consolidates more power. The war's nearly over, but he's showing no signs of relinquishing emergency authority." Bail nodded gravely. "We've been gathering signatures, quietly. Senators willing to demand restoration of constitutional governance the moment the separatist threat ends." "It won't be enough," Mon Mothma said. "Palpatine has positioned himself brilliantly. Any opposition looks like treason when the war still rages." Padmé's jaw set with determination. "Then we make our opposition impossible to ignore. We draft legislation now, ready to introduce the moment Grievous falls. A bill stripping the Chancellor of wartime powers and restoring Senate authority over the Jedi Order." "That's political suicide," Bail warned. "The military supports Palpatine almost universally." "Then I'll commit political suicide," Padmé said fiercely. "Because if we don't stop this now, there won't be a republic left to save." What none of them realized was that Palpatine's reach extended far beyond conventional surveillance. While their security jammers blocked standard monitoring, the dark side of the Force had its own methods. Through carefully placed informants among the servant staff, through Sith sorcery that could pluck surface thoughts from across the city, Through the simple fact that one of Mon Mothma's aides reported directly to Confnor, every word Padmé spoke was another nail in her coffin. Another piece of evidence that could be used to paint her as a conspirator when the time came. When Anakin learned of her plans, he didn't try to stop her. Instead, he stood beside her. "The Jedi Council won't support this," he told her. "They'll see it as undermining the war effort." "I know," Padmé said quietly. "Will you?" Anakin pulled her close. "I'll support you. Always. The Council is so busy clinging to their code that they can't see Palpatine is turning the Republic into something unrecognizable. If they won't stand with you," his voice hardened, "then they're part of the problem." In the Jedi Temple, Mace Windu reviewed intelligence reports with growing alarm. Anakin Skywalker was publicly aligning with the faction of senators increasingly opposed to Jedi involvement in the war. The young knight was attending their meetings, speaking openly about Republic overreach and constitutional violations. "He's becoming radicalized," Mace said to Obi-Wan. "Not by the Sith, by politicians." "Padmé Amidala is not a separatist," Obi-Wan protested. "No," Mace agreed grimly. "But she may be creating the very chaos the Sith need to finalize their plans. And Anakin is too blind with loyalty to see it." The Council was preparing to make a move. They had to. The Force itself screamed warnings of impending catastrophe. But in their preparation, they missed the crucial detail. Anakin Skywalker was no longer afraid of loss. He was prepared for war. The end came swiftly. When Palpatine revealed himself to Anakin as Darth Sidious, the conversation went differently than the Sith Lord had anticipated, but perhaps better. "The Jedi are planning to overthrow the Republic," Palpatine said, his voice grave with manufactured concern. "Mace Windu intends to arrest me. And when they control the Senate through force, Senator Amidala and her allies will be executed as traitors." Anakin's hand went to his lightsaber. "Padmé has done nothing wrong." "The Jedi don't see it that way," Palpatine said softly. "To them, she's a threat to their authority. Anakin, I need you to understand something. The Jedi Order believes it alone should determine the fate of the galaxy. They'll remove anyone who challenges that. Chancellor, Senator, or Chosen One." For a long moment, Anakin was silent. Then, "What do you need me to do?" When Mace Windu arrived with his strike team, Anakin was already there. The purple blade ignited. The red blade answered. And this time, when Anakin cut down Mace Windu's sword arm, he didn't hesitate. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He simply caught Mace as he fell toward the window and said, "The Jedi betrayed the Republic. I'm saving it." As lightning consumed Master Windu, Anakin knelt before Palpatine, not in desperation, but in commitment. "I pledge myself to your teachings, my master," he said. "To the security and stability of the Empire." Palpatine smiled. "Henceforth, you shall be known as Darth Vader." Vader rose, and when he spoke, his voice was cold with purpose. "The Senate will be protected. Padmé will be safe." Palpatine nodded solemnly. "She will be, Lord Vader. I give you my word." As he spoke those words, he thought of the Senate reception 3 days prior, where he'd clasped Padmé's hand in greeting, where the Sith poison had transferred from his ring to her skin, where the slow-acting toxin had begun its work. It would take weeks to kill her, just long enough. "But first, we must ensure the Jedi cannot harm her. You know what must be done." The promise would last exactly as long as it needed to. Order 66 swept across the galaxy like a plague. In the Jedi Temple, Vader led the 501st with terrifying efficiency. No hesitation, no mercy. These were the people who would have killed Padmé to preserve their power. Every youngling was a future threat. Every master was a conspirator in waiting. When Obi-Wan felt Anakin's presence through the Force during the massacre, he sensed no confusion, no conflict, only absolute, unwavering conviction. "Lost him. We have," Yoda said as they fled into exile.
Not to fear, to certainty. Worse, that is.
Ahsoka, far away on Mandalore, felt her master's fall like a blade through her heart. But even she could sense the difference. This wasn't a man drowning. This was a man who had chosen his course and would burn the galaxy before deviating from it. The Clone Wars ended in fire and betrayal, just as they always would have. But this time, Darth Vader stood at the Emperor's side with clarity of purpose that made him infinitely more dangerous than any version of himself driven by fear. On Mustafar, Padmé confronted the monster her husband had become. She learned of Anakin's location through Bail Organa's intelligence network, whispers of a separatist massacre, of a dark figure leading clone troopers through the volcanic world. She had to see for herself, had to know if the man she loved was truly gone. Unknown to her, Obi-Wan had tracked her ship, having accessed the temple security recordings that showed Anakin's role in the massacre. He'd hoped to find his former apprentice. Instead, he found something far worse.
Anakin, what have you done?
Padmé's voice broke as she stared at him across the landing platform, the lava flows casting everything in a hellish light. What I had to, Vader replied. His voice was different, colder. The Jedi were staging a coup. They would have killed you, Padmé. Everything you worked for. Everyone in the Senate who opposed them. Dead. I stopped them.
You killed children, Padmé whispered. You've become everything we fought against.
I've become what was necessary. Vader's voice rose, but not with anguish, with frustration. The Republic was rotting from within. The Jedi, the Senate, everyone clinging to broken systems while the galaxy burned. The Emperor will bring order. At what cost? Padmé demanded.
Anakin, you've given him everything. Your loyalty, your conscience, your...
My what? Vader's eyes were cold. My future? What future, Padmé? We had no children to pass this broken galaxy to. No legacy but survival. The Emperor offers stability, security, a galaxy where you and I can finally just exist. Without prophecies, without war.
This is war, Padmé screamed. You're not ending it, you're perfecting it.
Behind her, Obi-Wan emerged from the ship. Vader's face hardened into something inhuman. You brought him here to kill me! The duel that followed was as vicious as any Mustafar had witnessed, but this Vader fought with cold precision rather than wild rage. When Obi-Wan finally severed his limbs, Vader didn't scream in anguish. He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You've won nothing! Vader gasped as flames consumed him. The Empire rises whether I survive or not! Obi-Wan stared at his former apprentice, tears streaming down his face. This was somehow worse than if Anakin had fallen to fear. This Anakin had chosen damnation with open eyes. Padmé couldn't watch. Obi-Wan had to physically pull her back to the ship as Vader's screams, now genuine, now filled with agony, echoed across the volcanic plains. As they fled Mustafar, Imperial shuttles were already descending to retrieve what remained of Darth Vader. In the Imperial Center, soon to be renamed Coruscant once more, Emperor Palpatine oversaw the cybernetic reconstruction of his apprentice. The medical droids worked for days, replacing burnt flesh with durasteel, ruined lungs with mechanical respirators. When consciousness finally returned to Vader, his memories of Mustafar were fragmented. Pain, lava, Obi-Wan's face, Padmé's screams. But the details were lost in a haze of agony and surgical anesthesia. Vader emerged from the surgical suite more machine than man, his breathing a mechanized rasp.
Where is Padmé?
Were Vader's first words through the mask. The question came from the last clear memory he had, seeing her in Coruscant before leaving for Mustafar, before everything went wrong.
She returned to Coruscant,
Palpatine said carefully, each word precisely calibrated.
But the shock of what occurred. Lord Vader, she is recovering. The physicians say she needs time. The stress of the war. Your transformation. It has taken a toll.
It wasn't quite a lie. Not yet. Padmé had indeed returned to Coruscant with Obi-Wan. She'd gone into hiding in Bail Organa's protection, refusing medical attention despite Obi-Wan's concerns about her deteriorating health. She was determined to document what she'd witnessed, to record testimony that might someday bring Palpatine to justice. But the poison was doing its work. The Sith toxin that Palpatine had administered 3 weeks earlier, at that final Senate reception before Order 66, was designed to mimic cardiac arrest brought on by stress. Undetectable, unstoppable.
I want to see her,
Vader demanded.
Soon,
Palpatine promised.
First, you must recover your strength. The Empire needs you whole.
3 weeks later, Padmé Amidala died in her sleep in a safe house on Coruscant, Bail Organa at her bedside. The official report cited cardiac arrest brought on by the wartime trauma and exhaustion. In her final conscious moments, she'd managed to whisper her testimony into a holocron, a record of Anakin's fall, Palpatine's manipulation, the Republic's end. Bail encrypted it and hid it away, knowing that someday, somehow, the truth would matter. Delivering the eulogy before a carefully managed state funeral, Bail Organa spoke of a woman who loved the Republic too much to watch it die. What he didn't mention was the Sith poison, undetectable in any autopsy, leaving no trace except a stopped heart. Palpatine had administered it weeks ago, timing it perfectly. He'd simply been waiting for Vader to be too broken, too transformed, too encased in his armor to save her. When Vader learned of her death, he destroyed an entire wing of the Imperial Palace. 47 staff members died in the rampage. Palpatine watched from a safe distance, satisfied. This Vader had conviction. Now, he had rage. The combination was perfect.
She's gone, my old friend,
Palpatine said when Vader finally knelt before him, spent.
But her dream, a galaxy of order, of security, that lives on in the Empire, in you.
Vader said nothing. In his mind, he replayed every moment, every choice, every word. The fragmented memories of Mustafar haunted him. Had he hurt her there? Had his anger, his rage damaged the one person he tried to save? He would never know for certain. The gaps in his memory were chasms he couldn't cross. And he never once suspected that the poison had come from the one man he still trusted. The Emperor had won completely. Years passed. The Empire spread like a plague across the Outer Rim. On Tatooine and Alderaan, in the Yavin temples and the Dagobah swamps, the scattered remnants of the Jedi Order whispered of hope, but there were no Skywalker twins. No farm boy destined to redeem his father. No princess carrying the Force like a torch in the darkness. Just a galaxy learning to kneel. Bail Organa and Mon Mothma formed their rebel alliance anyway, but it was harder now, slower. Without destiny guiding them, every victory had to be earned through blood and sacrifice. The Death Star still rose. The Senate was still dissolved, but the spark of rebellion that should have been inherited was instead built from scratch by ordinary people refusing to surrender. In the depths of the Imperial Palace, Darth Vader stood before a massive viewport, watching stars streak past as his ship traveled to some distant world to crush some insignificant uprising. His breathing was the only sound in the observation deck, mechanical, rhythmic, eternal. He never learned the whole truth about Padmé, never discovered that the man who promised to save her had instead murdered her. The fragmented memories of Mustafar left him believing his own rage might have been responsible, that perhaps his anger, his transformation, his very presence had stopped her heart. And in that self-inflicted guilt, he remained the perfect weapon, convinced he'd failed her through his own weakness, never knowing he'd been played from the start. Palpatine had not just killed Padmé Amidala, he'd killed the possibility of redemption itself. And in a galaxy without Skywalker heirs, Without hope passed down like a lightsaber through generations, darkness reigned supreme. This is what happens when a prophecy ends before it begins. When a chosen one has nothing left to lose except the illusion that he chose anything at all. The galaxy learned to live in that shadow. Some fought against it. Most simply endured. But all of them, whether they knew it or not, mourned the children who never existed. The twins who would have been named Luke and Leia, who would have carried the light forward, who would have reminded everyone that even in the darkest times, hope can be reborn. Without them, hope became something harder, something that had to be forged rather than inherited. And the galaxy discovered that maybe, just maybe, that was the only hope that ever truly mattered. If you enjoyed this journey into an alternative Star Wars universe, where destiny takes unexpected turns and balance means something entirely different, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We explore infinite possibilities hidden within the galaxy far, far away, asking the questions that reshape everything you thought you knew. The Force has many paths. Come discover them with us.